also inside a discussion in the Meetup group online as well. So the first lessons that we did was an app called Word Collage. So those were 4 lessons and that we completed over the last 2 sessions. This is the 3rd session, and we are starting inside of Space Adventure. The previous ones covered more of some UI, getting to know Xcode, and other topics. Obviously, we will do more UI later, but they felt, the creators of the curriculum felt like you needed to dabble in some of the UI right off the bat, and then today we go into code and some Swift syntax with this Space Adventure. So for the announcements, Chris didn't make it today, the RSVP, no, but he had the mid-month Swiftimber meeting. Say that 10 times fast. So we say thank you to Chris and Danielle. That went pretty well at Ovenbits, where it was held at the headquarters of the company where Chris works. So next announcement is Slack. We have a Slack team for this Urban iOS Jumpstart group, and it's set up and ready for all of us to join. Now, I have to admit that I have not pushed it very much, but what I'm going to start doing is putting curriculum, notes, things of that nature, start posting it up here on Slack instead of, or the links, post those in here on Slack. How many of you are already familiar with Slack, have used it in another context? Okay, good. Wow, it's first I've used it. So they say, Chris, I'll probably have asked Chris Stewart to more maintain Slack, but to do some of the things that I'm not familiar with yet. But this is what will be our communications tool, and hopefully keep the conversation going in between our, the month that's in between our meetups, since our meetups are once a month. So, if you want to get on Slack, what I suggest, I put up this email address during the last meeting, jamesderry.com. What I would suggest is just after this meeting, just come up and let me send you an invitation for Slack. Otherwise, I'll have to check that email account, which is not a problem. But if you do it after this meeting, you'll walk out with your Slack login, or at least the invitation. So, there was a week or 2 ago, we had the Apple Developer Apple TV raffle. It's over. So just to get how many people know what the raffle is and how many people applied.
I know what it is, but I didn't apply.
Okay. You know what it is, you didn't apply? Okay. So Apple held, I still don't know what it was, I just signed up. They held something, I think it was a raffle, where they were giving developers Apple TVs. And it would cost $1. I never really understood what it cost, but they were charging for $1 if you won.
Yeah, I think what happened was they announced that they have this new Apple TV device they're coming out with. They said if you're a developer and you want to build an app for it, then register on their website, which is what I did and what a lot of people did. And they said they were going to favor people who already have apps in the App Store, and I think they were favoring people who have probably more than one app in the App Store. Yeah. And then basically from there, they decided after the registration was over, they decided instead of saying, oh yeah, you got to pay $150, we're going to bill your account. They just said we're going to bill you $1, which is basically like a processing fee kind of thing, I guess, like the legal reasons. And they charge you $1 for it, and they basically gave it to you. They shipped it to you, and so people just started seeing shipments of them just like a week ago or 2 weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, so I mean, it's really like, it's like the golden ticket, right? Yeah. It's like Willy Wonka decided to give out free chocolate, right? And you're like, what?
I was like, why not? Yes.
Exactly. I mean, in the history of Apple, they usually don't give out anything free.
Exactly.
you know, I was an employee there for 5 years, and I got maybe a jacket, a couple of T-shirts, you know. And I think the only one big thing they did give out when they came out with the iPhone, they gave out everybody an iPhone. But that was just to boost their initial sales numbers, so that like people had iPhones. You know?
Right.
But you know, they didn't give us an iPhone the next year. They didn't give us an iPad.
So what was the raffle aspect of it? 'Cause that's
The
not
raffle aspect is it's like, I don't know if you applied for WWDC.
Yeah.
So basically WWDC was like a raffle.
Yeah,
They basically randomly, they said they randomly were choosing people.
Did they?
I don't
Lord
know.
knows.
No one knows their choosing process. It's like, it's a golden ticket process. It's like, okay, you don't know whether, because like I got a buddy, he works in New York. He said he got 2 of them from 2 different accounts that he has.
What?
Yeah, and another guy of mine, he doesn't have any apps in the App Store, and he got one. So
Wow.
yeah.
So I heard that they were being partial to people with apps. Was that listed online?
It was not. It was kind of just hearsay.
Okay.
That's hearsay. It's a lot of hearsay.
Anyway, it's over. And I'm
Yes.
Charlie without a ticket to the chocolate factory. So
Yes.
I just gotta wait till October? End of October?
November. I know.
So just so nobody's hopes got up, it's over.
It's over, exactly.
But I was hoping that Ramesh would be here.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, Ramesh got one,
He
yeah.
got one.
And Chris, it sounded like Chris, or at least his company might have gotten one, so we were gonna throw some paper, get some of that envy out. So, okay, and then we already talked about our superstar here.
Superstar right there.
Okay.
She's 1 degree of separation.
Exactly. There's our 1 degree of separation. Okay, so we'll get into space adventure. So this first app is going to be, it's a console app inside of Xcode. So it's really simple, but it starts introducing us to the whole space adventure set of lessons, which I believe is 15 lessons. Starts introducing us to Swift syntax, classes, some basic Swift application without the UI, without the complication of doing the UI for an app. So the first lesson is for us to declare Swift constants and print string literals with, well, it says print line. So you have to understand that this curriculum was written before Swift 2 was finalized. Print ln is no longer necessary. Now it's just print.
What the hell were they thinking? That's the one call in the API that they should have never thrown in there.
It sounds very Unix-like, doesn't it?
Well, it's totally
Let's
Java,
see.
right? I mean, why did they have to do that? Did they think they had to get Java developers to go ln?
Come on, Alan.
They have written what's wrong with IE?
Well, I'm an NSLog guy, so I don't know.
I just
Surprisingly, NSLog still works.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it does.
You know, surprisingly.
Yeah,
I'm in this log too.
It's
Print
really-
reminds me of basic.
yeah.
So even though the curriculum actually says print line, print ln, but you'll see that Xcode is going to automatically convert it away from print ln. So declaring constants, print string literals with a print statement. The learning outcomes are recognize the main Swift file in a Swift Xcode project and describe the main.swift as a starting point for a Swift program. Then apply string literals, string interpolation, and print to produce console output, and then write variable and constant initializations with Swift. So who here is brand new to Swift? Okay, good, great. Because all of the material here is geared towards new to Swift, and even to a large extent new to object-oriented programming. So let's get started. Sit down. So I'm gonna start out Xcode. Xcode 7.01 just came out yesterday, and I did not have the presence of mind to download it before today. So I'm still using the 7.0 beta. Let me get my clean files here. Project Space Adventure lesson. So right off the bat, Xcode wants to convert the version to the latest Swift syntax, and you can just say convert, tells you what it's going to do. And I just click next through all this. It generates it, shows you the changes, and that's where print line is getting changed to print. So that's going to be the only change in this project. So I'm coming over here to the project navigator and opening up main.swift. This room makes it much more straightforward to have our laptops and to follow along if you're interested in that. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is talk about this function right here, which used to be print line, but now it's print. And very straightforward, print, open parentheses, and open quotes, and you have your hello world. So we're going to declare a couple of variables. So it's a var number of planets, integer equals 8. Diameter of Earth, float equals 24859.82. I'll put their words. Okay, so this is a Swift variable declaration and initialization. So we have var, and if you, yes, go ahead.
Why wouldn't the diameter of Earth be let? Is it going to change?
That's a very good question. Now, for this, the lesson is going to be set to var.
Yeah,
Until
if you'd have downloaded the new version, it would have told you that after you hit return, because I get that all the time.
it would auto-correct it to
It wouldn't auto-correct, it'll just say it hasn't been used yet, so it would flash as yellow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we do,
If it was a let, I'm sorry.
we do change it to let towards
Why is it not allowed?
towards it. You're right, because it's a constant. So it's a very good question, and you just jumped about 7 lines in the lesson.
Oh.
Because we are going to change that to let.
Oh, okay.
But the question is, why isn't var let? And you're right, for a constant, we use a let. For something that's not going to change, we use a let. And for something that we do need to change, we use var. They start out with var here, so I'm just going to go literally line by line with how they're doing it. And as you see, this is the name in camel case, which is the words are separated. The first letter of the first word is lowercase, and then each first letter of each subsequent word is uppercase. The type is an integer, and when it's set equal to 8, and diameter of the earth, the type is a float. So, and then comments is going to be the double slash. statements. Our solar system.
How come you can't refactor with Swift? Next code. If you can machine, and see. Maybe why doesn't Xcode support refactoring yet, like naming and extracting methods?
They haven't got into that.
From like Objective-C to Swift?
No, just in Swift, right? So if I, highlighted one, I know I'm way off topic, but I'm just curious, why doesn't it support the refactoring functionality in
They
Xcode?
haven't finished converting everything, that's all. All the functionality is not completely done.
Apple's lazy.
But it shouldn't be, right? That should be a rename is.
Like renaming classes?
Yeah.
Renaming
Or a method.
classes is possible.
Or a method,
Renaming
a method.
a method? Yeah, I don't know. The way they showed it off in like WWDC is just like search and replace.
Yeah, which is the old C approach, right?
Search and replace.
Yeah.
I know for classes there's like a, I think under edit, I believe there's a way to basically like change the class name, and then it'll change like all the dependencies to change the class. But
Alright.
Yeah, and you still have the, I mean, I haven't used it here, but you still have like the edit all in scope and, but I guess that's not gonna refactor across multiple files, so.
Right,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it's been like that for a year and a half, right? I mean, it's been basically,
yeah, I mean a lot of modern IDEs do that kind of stuff, have that built in.
alright, okay.
Apple's lazy.
Well, that's good enough for me, I just, it seemed weird, but.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the last one here. Which had a circumference of. Okay. Now the things to note here, and if you come from other languages, you probably recognize this pretty easily. The string interpolation is the first, first kind of dynamic or pattern that we recognize here. The slash and then the variable in parentheses automatically gets converted to or interpolated into a string and placed inside that as part of the print output. So here we have number of planets, and here we have diameter of Earth. So you can see already what this is going to do when we hit run. So let's hit run, Command R, or else you can just hit this play button at the top. And I'm going to expand my my console output as well. So there it says, hello world, and then welcome to our solar system. Then there are 8 planets to explore. You are currently on Earth, which has a circumference of, and then that number, and then program ends. I'm going to see if I can remember how to turn on the zoom to a location in accessibility. Where's accessibility? Zoom. Keyboard. Zoom in.
I just use a gesture. You just want to follow keyboard, I see.
Zoom follows keyboard focus. for, let's see, use keyboard shortcuts, is it, use scroll gesture with modifier keys, yeah, okay, that's what you meant, okay. That's what I figured. Let's see. Oh, there it is. Good, alright. So that's our output, pretty straightforward. So the next thing in the lesson, that the lesson points out, is that type annotations are not necessary in Swift, are not mandatory in Swift, when Swift can infer the data type of the variables by inspecting the kinds of values assigned to them during initialization. So that's a fancy way of saying you don't need the int and the float here. It can infer those types because of the values that are assigned. So the next step that we're going to do is remove those type annotations and see that it still works. So if I rerun it using Command R, you get the same result, and that is without having those type annotations. Did you have a question that you wanted to share, or some kind of discussion?
Yeah, you only downloaded the Swift file only, not the entire project, so there's no way to like run it.
Oh, okay.
To just force the project from, for the entire thing to GitHub or just on the website.
Okay. Okay. Do you have the full project now? Do you have
No.
full Xcode project?
I don't know.
No, okay.
I got something.
Yeah. Is it a file or two? Okay. All right, so now is where the discussion on var and let come in. Does anybody want to say the difference between var and let? And what I'll do is, let me bring up the URL with the actual, to the Xcode projects.
So I guess var means that you can actually mutate the object, so you can change the value. Let means it's immutable, it means you can't change a value. It's just main distinction.
And that takes less memory, right?
Sure.
It's just where it is, right? Stack versus the heap.
Yeah, exactly.
It's one's a struct, one's a class, so one's a reference type versus
Yeah, versus,
so one's faster, right?
supposedly.
Well, it is.
We'll let Apple decide whether they want to make it faster or not.
You make a point. There you go.
Does anyone do like audio video programming? I guess games because it would be pretty high intensity. Because I rarely care about like speed and performance unless I'm dealing with like really fast multiplications or something like that. But I let Apple do all the magic behind the scenes. I mean, unless it's like, games, something, that you need to optimize, or like audio, video, I've left that land.
Yeah, it is weird. I mean,
Yeah,
it almost feels like going back 15 years ago. I mean,
yeah.
isn't that the whole point of having the heat
The whole heat
instead of the
stack,
stack?
yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
crying out loud.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm assuming Apple guys underneath are using it.
Are they?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
They're definitely using it for like for loops, iteration, all that stuff. They know.
So when they kick out the stack, it just crashes stuff. I mean, right? Because that's
Well, they
when you mess with
well
the
they
stack.
handle all the memory management too, all the allocation and deallocation of memory.
So that's a good question. So when it calls it a stack versus the heap, is that at the stack at the LLVM layer or lower? You know what I mean? Because the stack at the LLVM layer isn't really a stack, it's just the stack structure.
Yeah.
It's not the memory stack of
Yeah.
the machine. Sorry.
That's all.
No. I'm listening so I can learn too.
No, this is
I don't
a
even know.
separate chapter, memory management.
Yeah, except for chapter. Memory management.
Makes me
was-
sick to my stomach. I'm totally with you. I never understood why. But yeah.
Hands up and let Apple take the lead.
But everything you read is so heavy-handed. It even says it in here, I think in the second chapter or third, it says begin with let.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's in quotes and italics. And
Until
it's
I
like,
tell you you can't use that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the next statement here is to discuss how Swift best practice of declaring constants with let rather than var. Encourage students to always start with let. So Xcode now does that encouragement. It's
Yeah.
just
They-
like
they
what
will
Mike
yell at
said, it will bug you.
Well, I think there was some new optimization in Swift 2.0 with let. And I haven't played with Swift 2.0, but I know that in Swift 2.0, with like a let, you can initialize a let to some value, but then actually change the value or something like that. There's something weird like that. Let me look.
All right, to the internet.
Let me look.
Yeah, exactly, to the internet, find out what that is.
so are you talking about like swizzling, where you can actually change the reference, what it refers to, or?
I will get the
Because I mean,
actual.
isn't a let literally a runtime constant?
I think they did it as a way to get around something else. It was something that people were constantly doing, and they weren't,
Wow.
can't remember what it
Now, I thought with Swift, we weren't ever gonna hear that S word again, swizzle.
was. Swizzle.
No, I just bring it up because that's the only thing that could make sense, right? Because I mean, I don't care what language you're dealing with, if you allocate memory and it's a constant at runtime, it cannot be changed. You can copy it,
Right.
you can add to it, you can minus the copy, but that reference, the only thing you could do is change the pointer, right? And I mean, you wouldn't do any of that in Swift, would you? I mean,
Right, exactly, that's what I was just
you
joking
would
about.
never do pointers.
Yeah, that's what I was just joking about, like, that they would not have such that's one of the things that they were trying to stop. I mean, not necessarily
I'm just
stop
saying
people
it,
from
that'd be
doing, but
amazing.
make clean, make it clean. But that'd be interesting to find out if that's the case, that there is some new Swift way to do that now. All right, okay, so that is lesson 1 for Space Adventure. Are there any questions? If not, then we will move on to lesson 2.
Oh, just one.
Sure, yes.
Yesterday, I was just reviewing, his apps, and my question is, in general, is Swift stable enough, or is it still having, too many bugs?
That's a good question. Now, I think as of Swift 2.0, I think you can confidently say that it's stable enough. And somebody chime in on that? Anybody else have that experience, or?
Well, the Swift code itself doesn't really have a lot of bugs, like it doesn't cause problems, but it has been changing as far as like what you've learned, like even the lesson plan we have here is kind of old, and what it, it encourages different type of coding. And so we assume that 2.0 is gonna be pretty good for a while. But I really think that Swift as a language is definitely preferred over the Objective-C. It's probably going to be a lot more optimized. There's going to be a lot more options available later on with Swift than with the other language.
I agree, like, I agree with what you said, because that's what I was reading, and basically, I was trying to decide, okay, is it even worth learning Objective-C, or do I just leave that behind, or how near is Swift to being stable?
Sure.
Because I kept on reading stuff that
Yeah.
the tools kit, it close up or something like that.
Sure.
So that was my question.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still a little biased towards Objective-C, but definitely Swift. Swift is probably the language you want to learn if you're just new starting out, just because that's the language they're going to be talking to you in. That's the verbiage they're going to be using at every Apple talk from here on out. So they're not really going to be talking Objective-C language anymore. So it's probably best to learn it now because you're kind of at the same level as anybody else trying to learn it who had an Objective-C background, you know. So I think it's definitely an advantage to learn Swift now than trying to go back to Objective-C or trying to go back, you know. But there's a separation between Objective-C and Cocoa, right? Because a lot of the Cocoa stuff is really based around like the UI kits, frameworks, and all of the views and model view controller architecture, that kind of. So you still need to understand that part of it, and a lot of the examples that you'll see on GitHub are really like a lot of them are Objective-C code. So I think, you know, it's one of those things where you still need to understand the Cocoa, the whole UI and model view controller paradigms for programming views and things like that. Even outside of Swift or Objective-C, you still need to understand that type of part. You know? So
That's a very good point. Is to say Objective-C, I think it's easy to think in terms of Cocoa, you know, like the actual frameworks, which are not necessarily Objective-C. They're just written in Objective-C.
There's written in Objective-C.
Is that accurate to say? So with Swift, you will be learning the same frameworks, but you'll be learning the implementation in Swift. You're using Swift instead of Objective-C. And then to speak to the is it stable part yet? You know, is it stable yet question? The Xcode just came into what do you call it, GA or the final release. I think literally yesterday. Is that after the announcement, after the September 9th announcements and all the new products out and everything? So this now, only now, do we have the final Xcode that you are to use for Swift 2.0. So the jury is still out, but meaning we don't, I use a lot of euphemisms and metaphors and stuff on, you know, the jury's still out. What I mean to say is that we don't know exactly yet, but the assumption is that with this being 2.0, Apple is making a declaration that this is ready. Whereas before it had that feeling like, because I know even trying to dig into it myself and teach it, it was kind of like, oh, this, you know, it feels like we're on shaky ground. But my understanding is that 2.0 is this is the way to go. Yes.
Yeah, what's the best place or best resource for like understanding MVC? So I was watching a video on that today, and like the way like the outlets and what's delegated and how like the model like connects with the controller that talks to the view, but the model can't, like it's all weird. And
Yeah.
I don't know if there's like a good resource for that.
So
Trying to understand.
MVC this is how I broke it down. And in my opinion, frameworks versus MVC versus Objective-C versus Xcode was what made learning Objective-C difficult, what made learning iPhone app development difficult. So if you take a step back and recognize that MVC is a pattern, then it helped me, I don't know, because I gotta understand the big picture before I can dig in. There are a couple of books on design patterns, and MVC is a major pattern for iOS development. So there's a book by Yacht and Buckman, and I think it's called iOS Design Patterns. It is something that just really helped me a lot to separate the way you're supposed to think from the way you're supposed from the programming itself. That's not necessarily a Swift thing. But Buckman and Yacht, and I'm trying to remember, do they specifically talk MVC? They might indirectly talk it, but they tell every pattern that's common in iOS development. Well, at least back, the book was written in probably 2009, 2010. But the patterns haven't changed. The language will change, but the patterns haven't changed.
Okay.
You said it's called design pattern?
Yeah, I think I know design patterns are in the title,
Okay.
but yacht, Y-A, I guess the best thing I could is bring it up, Y-A-C-H-T, I think, in Buckman. Oh, that's yacht.
Fucking yacht. Yeah. Y-T-T, maybe? Is that right? Coco design?
Oh, that's it, yeah, that's it, Coco Design Pattern.
Yeah.
Was I close?
I still don't actually.
Ah, there it is.
But what did I say?
You said iOS design.
Okay, so this is, with this book, very eye-opening for me. For Coco, which you're going to be manipulating and making your apps, whether you're using Swift or Objective-C. And that's one, to me, this is one of the, they did such a good job. And I think it's still relevant, even though it's written in, let's see what year that was. But it's still relevant.
There's a GitHub thing for design pattern in Swift too.
Okay.
It's just, yeah, the repo's called design pattern in Swift.
Nice.
But yeah, like, kind of like a book, how GitHub has like a intense readme or something, yeah. It's just
Yes.
all in readme.
Oh, good, okay. Yeah, that'd be something worth pulling out, design on GitHub. And then the other place that I would say, and I don't know if it's still out there because I haven't checked in a long time, is the Stanford University course.
Yeah, it's still out there.
It's really good.
It's on iTunes, yeah.
All right, he talks about MVC.
Yeah, I watched his MVC thing today and it was all weird.
Yeah, so you just watch it again. I mean, I'm telling you, when I was learning Objective-C, this is part of the hurdle of learning iOS development, and I just watched his courses over and over and over again until it started making sense.
And his course, it makes sense like as you finish the project. It's not like that first whatever lecture. It is kind of like,
Yeah, it is.
how do I connect it to what I'm doing? And then as he steps through it, you kind of say, oh, we're gonna move the logic over here, and this is my calculator logic, and this is
that's all about the
that kind of thing.
Which guy?
He's all hybrid.
Yeah, that's integrity.
Yeah.
He taught a new version of that over the winter, that's all done.
Yeah,
So
that's the
So it's the upgraded version.
Yeah.
And he started that in January and then it ended in May. And I know what you're talking about, because I've taken the old Objective-C one, and it seems like I don't know if he must have got out of it or whatnot, but he improved the course a ton.
Okay.
And so I know what you're talking about with the whole MVC, because he hits you pretty early with it.
Yes.
And he does a fair job of explaining it, but I think this last go around, he did a better job of it.
Is it because?
Well, he introduces it probably middle of the course.
Okay.
He just does basic, like he talks interface builder and auto layout and a lot of those concepts. And then the middle 2/3, he really gets into the MVC and just really gets into it, so, I don't know.
Okay. Wow, so he even started out with auto layout?
It's like in the second or third class, he starts
Wow.
he's building the same calculator app. He really breaks down auto layouts, and I don't know, it's kind of a similar story to what you said, is for some reason, finally, when I watched it, auto layouts made sense. I was like, okay, that's easy.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but, yeah.
Yeah, he does one of the first lessons with the calculator. He creates like some constraint where it's like 108.
Between the
In a flash, like 108 constraints on these buttons so that they resize on any sized, iOS device. And it's really good, but yeah, and some of the homework challenges.
I mean,
will challenge you.
he's speaking to like Stanford computer science students,
Yeah.
right? So there's already a barrier just to even get to his class. Like, so the fact that he's opening it for free is almost like, hey man, you're just seeing a glimpse into like this bigger world.
I did like one of the first. I did the first homework assignment, and I think some of the extra credit stuff is just like.
It's like 30 hours.
Skip.
It's like 30 hours.
I started it, and I think I got to lesson 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I'm
there's
like
stuff
lesson 1, I was
Friday,
like, what?
Yeah.
How long ago did you do, because he's been doing it for
Well, I
4 or
I
5
started
years.
at the beginning of the year, and then free time. It's like when I started coming here because it's just it helps to be somewhere physically.
Yeah.
And like try rather than trying to find time to sit down and go through a lecture online. It's just so it just my time constraints. I
Okay.
finished the first two assignments.
So we are all expert in the first 3 lessons, right?
Yes.
I watch them over and over again.
So I just want to say something. How I learned model view controller was just basically I was following like the Aaron Hilget's books. Aaron Hilget's, he does like he runs the Big Nerd Ranch, and he did like one of the first Cocoa books that came out. Probably 2002, 2003 or something like that. Well, I was just following along with his book, and I was doing Mac programming, and in Mac programming they actually have this thing called bindings, which actually allows you to basically build just the model and then map the model to your view, and then basically anytime the model changes, the view automatically change. And so that was kind of like the approach that they were trying to push for Cocoa on the Mac side. And they kind of, they only did kind of half the work on iOS, so you don't actually have like the two-way bindings where like if you move a slider, it updates the data model. That doesn't happen in iOS, but they still have what they call KVM, which is key value observing, KVO, key value observing, which basically lets you basically lets you observe when values change inside an object. So it's all kind of built a part of Cocoa framework so that you can actually do this type of MVC a lot easier in some respect.
Okay.
But I don't mind. I'll give a talk on it sometime.
Yeah.
What I gained from it, because I was using bindings heavily
On the Mac side.
on the Mac side.
Okay.
But on iOS, you could try to build something like that on iOS.
Right.
But it's not as advanced as it is. Like on the Mac, they have this thing called an array controller, where you basically give this object an array, and it automatically is mapped to your view, so that any object in the array maps to a single view element in the class. So it's almost like automatically building a table view for you. So it's pretty powerful.
So
Way less code.
So it's probably optimized for like a desktop processor, whereas when they moved to iOS, they started cutting out some features.
I assume so. I think there was a lot of extra baggage when you do the bindings, because a lot of the bindings is really like you had to add a lot of stuff to the view class to listen in on the bindings and keep all these, like, it's all based on like this notification model, like a messaging model. So I think that it wasn't very optimal on a mobile device. But it may come back.
Yes, that's what I was thinking.
Who knows?
As they get more powerful.
Yeah, it may come back.
So, NBC, so yeah, those are great questions.
Also, I just saw a book there in Amazon. I don't know if it is good or bad, but it's called Pro Design Patterns in Swift. I have no idea if it is good or bad, but the title is Pro Design Patterns in Swift.
Can anybody speak to this book? I thought about buying this one too.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Has anybody?
can you
Who's
click
the
on
author?
book?
Adam
Adam
Freeman?
Freeman?
And then can you click on the picture of the book?
It doesn't have anything.
And then go to table of contents. That's what I always look at first before I look.
Can you zoom into that?
Yeah, can you,
Also, they take like a gang 4 approach. Creational patterns, the structural patterns. Okay.
So, I'll also send a link out. There's a website I usually go to called itebooks.com or .info, and they basically have some links to like PDF versions of certain books, so,
Cool.
you know, that's my little hack of the day.
What is it called again?
It's called, it's it-ebooks.info. And you can search, you know, you can search in there for different book titles, and they have a really big selection. Like, I just searched for design.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Here at
Yeah,
work.
don't do it in this network.
Yeah, I just, legal question.
In this IT sector of Verizon, it's a pretty it's pretty well targeted now.
Is it?
They shut it down.
What do you mean by pattern? Like, you keep saying like this pattern, what is a pattern?
No, I just went off the cliff.
Do we have an explanation for
A design pattern.
a design pattern?
I mean the pattern is more of just kind of like because everything in this thing is like an architecture, and it can visually be seen as like an actual like model. And so
Okay.
so if you actually draw it out, it's actually an architectural model. And the reason why it's a pattern is because it's it's almost like a recipe, right? It's like something that if you're building any code, even if it's iOS code or a server or something, you still can use model view controller pattern, or you can use another type of coding pattern. It's a syntax used in like computer science language that's like basically like here's a recipe for how to solve a problem. And so these are kind of different coding patterns that have, traditionally solved certain problems. You know,
Okay, so
There's-
this one's like sports stores, so this is probably like e-commerce type pattern?
No,
Oh.
really, they just really focused at the problem.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
and you can combine multiples of them to solve a bigger problem, right? And so to that, there's this real widely known book called Gang 4, right? The Gamma, Erickman, whatever came out in 94. And they identified all these patterns, right? And then that became just widely adopted as what the standard. Everybody read it, right? And then it was translated to Java. And, practically every other language. And that's,
Yeah.
I mean, and they took an approach of the creational patterns,
Yeah.
right? And the structural patterns.
So basically, there's an elite group of very smart computer science
Yeah,
people
yeah.
who have basically written on tablets of stone how to write code properly and better, so that you're not like banging your head against the wall. And that became basically the design patterns that have kind of propagated over time.
And to add to that, Martin Fowler, who you have to name,
Mhm.
went and took that further, right? He said there's probably 21 more patterns that are identified that have to do with enterprise, right?
Mm.
That they didn't capture, because they really took just a real computer science look
Computer
at the
science
world.
stuff, yeah.
Yeah, like they didn't solve PubSub. They didn't solve, he comes up with MVP, right? Or unit of work. They didn't.
Oh, okay.
And so anyway, I'm just saying that's,
Interesting.
he adds like 21
Yeah,
more
that's
that are
cool.
commonly. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and if you think of software development as a terrain, these patterns are like discovering new elements, new elements, of that terrain. So, and there are probably more out there. The reason why I bring that up is that there's probably more, because one of the big things at WWDC 2015 this year was this whole protocol-oriented programming. And I can't say that I've wrapped my mind around what that is yet, but it's something, it's another pattern that not only are they kind of recommending it, but it seems like Swift is just completely geared to be able to do it well. So I mean, I can't speak to it a whole lot because I don't understand it fully. I don't understand the pattern fully. I'm still doing the 1970 something object-oriented, stuff. But the patterns are like a mental model, and the more you understand those mental models, the more it starts making sense when you see those COCO frameworks being either described by Hagerty or reading the frameworks in a manual. So
I like you captured recipe. That's what I always think of them as, because they can almost always be thought of as like this solves this, and if you put it over here and try to use it over here, it's completely way bad.
yeah.
It's almost an anti-pattern or a code smell, right? I mean, if you're doing server-based programming and introducing MVP or MVC, what are you doing?
Mhm.
I mean, you should just, you would never do that. I mean, you could try, you could do it, and you'd probably accomplish nothing. you know, there's no model view controller on the server.
Right,
You know what I
right,
mean?
exactly. Yeah,
Right, or an adapter pattern, right? You use that in some spots, you wouldn't in else. So like, I like what you talked about recipes, they're just, that's a
Yeah.
perfect word for it.
it's like yeah,
I can't think of a better one.
definitely. Any other questions? Those are great questions, especially for, you know, kind of getting up to, speed on
So
Swift.
just, everybody that's done OpC, just give me one answer, cause I don't wanna totally derail this again. What do you guys struggle with when you come to Swift? If you've done Java maybe, or maybe you've done Python, maybe not. Do you struggle with any of it?
My biggest struggle was optionals. That was the biggest thing.
Like optional parameters?
Yeah, like the question mark versus
Oh,
exclamation point. It's like, it seems pointless to
And
me.
it keeps changing also the
Yeah,
rules.
that's-
Yeah, and then the rules of when to put it in it keeps changing.
Yeah, cause whenever I type
Yeah.
something,
Oh,
out,
yeah, I see,
it
you
pops
know.
up, and
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, I can never.
And I was actually, I felt much more at ease when I didn't have to care about that stuff. When it was basically just like, here's a variable, here's some memory, here's some stuff. I don't, it could be nil, I don't
Yeah,
care,
yeah, gotcha.
you know?
The dynamic type,
Yeah,
just didn't care.
cause I was very used to handling nil very
Right, yeah,
easily
yep.
in Objective-C, so. Now that I have to check for it every time, just means I gotta write more code essentially.
Yeah.
In Swift 1.2, I didn't really have to add a lot of those optionals, it was kind of automatically done for me. But now it's like more explicit, so it's kind of a pain now, so I don't, we'll see how it goes out, you know. I'm still trying to figure out when I need to put it, when I don't, and then what's the best pattern
Yeah,
for using optional versus not, you know, like when you declare variables that are attached to IV outlets, do you use optionals or use non-optional? Exactly, right. Or if you have variables that you want to change sometime, but you know it's always gonna have a value, right? You know it's always gonna have value, even though that value may change. You know, it's one of those things where I'm just like, okay, whatever.
Okay.
I like nil. Nil is a great thing.
yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I like
Nil is fine.
With optionals, it can still be nil, right? You're just safeguarding against it, is that the whole thing? with
Well,
the
you
optional?
can't use it without safeguarding it, right?
So you can't initialize
Meaning-
pointer to nil? and then
Meaning
just
like
say-
you could put like if not nil, then you put an exclamation point on it,
Yeah.
right? You can still do that, but that's the same with
Hmm.
an if let kind of thing, so,
Oh,
you know what I'm saying? So-
Sept, oh, yeah.
Meaning my biggest thing was if you do an operation on a nil object, it returns 0, it returns like false
Right.
or whatever.
Right.
So I could always just say, assuming that I get an object in an array or I get an object in a method and I try to do operations on it, if it's not there, it won't do anything.
Right.
And I'm okay with that.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like when apps crash, you know?
Yeah.
So the fact that I have to add in all these little checks and then force the app to crash, it's almost like defeats the purpose, right? Because I'm basically adding more levels of, you know, complication, trying to get it to crash or trying to force it to get to points where, you know.
Yeah, and so my understanding that a lot of Swift is kind of protecting the developer from
From
him
themselves.
or herself
Yeah, which is.
by doing that. Because Objective-C allows you to have a lot of power, because you have that flexibility. But I'm trying not to sound like, you know, the good old days.
Right. Well, the only reason I ask is because, I mean, I approach it from more of a managed. I did Java forever and then C# and then Python, right? And I still approach, my whole mindset is that managed approach, right? Even with the LLVM, you're still managed. Objective-C is still managed.
Okay.
Not really, I mean, you can get down to the C call level. It's just like C or C++. I mean, you can get right there. And, I mean, there must be some things that maybe are odd or confusing to you guys or to anybody else that does a lot of Objective-C beyond the syntax, or maybe, I don't know, maybe we could get the syntax, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's as Jonathan said, especially the optionals.
Yeah.
And there's more for me, but I haven't had to dig into it as much. Not yet, so.
If I can use optionals and still write less code, I'm happy. But if I gotta keep adding iflets and stuff just so I can access data in a variable, like,
Yeah, the optional is frustrating to me. It's like when you go from a new version of Xcode, and my older version had a question mark, and the newer version it forces you to change to an exclamation point. That's what stresses me out, because I don't know why Apple decided to do that.
Right.
So it's like,
Cause it's forcing you to handle the else case, right? Where if it's not there, if it is nil, what else, what do you have to do? What's the else case? But in most time, people just say, they don't even put the else, they just say, hey.
Right.
And so,
They didn't put the nail? Is that the same thing?
they don't put the else, they don't handle like what happens if
There's
it is,
nothing.
yeah, there's nothing there, so. I think for new programmers, I think it's better to know that practice, because, I think it's easier to handle, it's easier to know it, to do it the right way, because you'll have less compiler problems. You won't get a lot of headaches trying to figure out, why is this not compiling, or why is this always crashing at this point? And you're like, oh, okay, it's probably because it's nil, you didn't check for it. Well, in Swift, you kind of force to check for it, so it's automatically checking that. So, I mean,
And from what I understand, that's what makes Swift a better language for, like, say, people coming from C# and certain other places. Is that accurate to say that?
yeah, I think Java and C# kind of have a similar syntax and kind of similar paradigm, I think. I'm not a
You
C#
have both in
person.
C# and Java, you can do both of what you're saying. You
Yeah.
can, it doesn't,
Doesn't
you go
force
down
you.
and use nullables, then you have to do what you're saying.
Yeah.
So what happens is you either kind of commit up front and commit heavy, or you don't use them at all.
Yeah.
And then, so you can do either one. If you write a method that forces to return or accept a nullable, whoever consumes that is gonna have to take all cases into account.
Sure.
So, a lot of people won't.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So, we'll see what happens down the line.
All right, so we'll go ahead and go to lesson 2 for the space adventure. And this is a pretty straightforward lesson as well. Let me get to here, just say what the, okay, so now we're modifying that same program to prompt the user to enter their name, print a greeting using their name. Then prompt the user to make a choice and display appropriate output for the choice made. So it's gonna ask, what is your name? And we'll put a name there, and it'll reply these, and the choices, it's looking for a Y or an N on the console input here. So let's do that real quick. Oh, the learning objectives is we'll practice calling functions and assigning the return value of the function to a constant. We'll observe how an app may consist of multiple source code files and relate decision making to Boolean logic and flow control constructs with if and else. So I opened up I'm opening up Space Adventure Lesson 2, the Xcode project, and just going through the steps of the Space Adventure lesson here. So let's get started. It's automatically converting it, getting rid of those print lns to regular print. So I save that here, and then we can open up in the project navigator. In the project navigator here on the left, I can expand Space Adventure. We have our main, and this time they included a set of helper functions, which is doing the actual get line function for us. So let's get started here. Okay, so we're going to immediately start typing code. If you open up the project lesson 2, all the things we did in lesson 1 are done for you correctly. And so we'll say print, what is your name? And then we'll say let name equals get. That's the function that they provided. And let's say print nice to meet string interpolation. Yeah, that one. My name is Liza. I'm an old friend of Siri. Okay. Okay, so we already saw how print was part of the Swift standard library. But what's new to us now is the get ln function. This is how you call, one way to call a function in Swift. And this function is created in the helper functions.swift file. If I come over here to the helper functions, and we'll see the code that reads the keyboard input essentially at the console. So we don't have to understand how this code works. We just want to understand that a function is here that defines getLine or getln. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to main here, and then let's run it. Open up our output down here, and now it's waiting for me to enter a name. Welcome to our solar system. There are 8 planets to explore. You are currently on Earth. What is your name? And if I type something in, hit enter. Nice to meet you, James. My name is Lisa. I'm an old friend of Siri. So all the code that we just did up here, that's what happened. It's nice to meet you. There's our name that was gotten to this function, included as a string in this sentence. Okay, now let's add some more code to suggest an adventure. All right, so I'm going to add here what I can do. Let's see if the presentation is going to be too big here. Fonts and colors. All right, we'll do presentation. Widen that some. Okay, I'm not sure if that helped or made it worse.
Looks great.
It looked great. Okay, so let's add some more lines here to make this a little bit more of an adventure. Let's go on an adventure. This so reminds me when I was teaching myself BASIC as a kid. The print statements. Print shall I randomly choose a planet for you to visit. And this is going to be capital Y or capital N. No. And then we're going to say let decision equal, and then we'll call that getLine function. So this is what we added right there. And then I randomly choose a planet, then let decision equals getLine. So now the program is going to need to make a decision on what to do based on whether the user inputted the Y or the N. So let's put in that decision logic, and then that's essentially the end of lesson 2. So the decision logic is going to be the if, then, else construct, and this is what it looks like in using Swift syntax. So we'll say if decision equals, and this is a comparison equals, so it's double equals equal Y. We open our brackets and say print. Okay. fleshed out later. And we'll put here to do travel to random planet. Now, if they choose no or anything but, if they choose capital N or anything but capital Y, then it will go flow through to this else statement where we'll print, okay, name the planet you would like to visit. And then we'll put in a to-do. Let the user select a planet to visit. All right, and then it close. Okay, so our if else construct here. If the condition is true, if decision is equal to capital Y, it does this block of code from that curly brace open to that closed curly brace. And if it's false, or if it's not capital Y, anything else, then it does this block of code. The, depending on what languages you're coming from, it's key here that that's a double equals, which is a comparison operator in Swift. A single equal would be an assignment operator and would not be the right operator for an if statement, for a decision to be made. Are there any questions to this point? Or any statements? Anything?
Hey, where's that get line? Where's that?
That's a good question. So this get line, I'm gonna hold down option, let's see, it's a command, I'll hold down command and tap it, because that's normally how I figure out where something is at. But it's in the helper function here, which is a file that they provided. So it's like a function that was included with the project. And that's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I've also used triple equal, which allows you to compare nil values.
Oh, really? Oh, now, what is that?
I was doing some stuff in my code where I needed to compare a nil, and I kept getting an error, so I Stack Overflow, triple equal allows you to compare two values that are potentially nil.
Okay.
Like optional values.
Okay. So that, yeah, there we go again.
Do you use a lot of triple equals now?
No, I was just once.
So let's do the info. Let's run this, Command R. And now it's asking, what is your name? So we'll put name, hit enter. Nice to meet you, James. Let's go in an adventure. Shall I randomly choose a planet for you to visit? I'm gonna hit O, not a Y or an N. And it says, okay, name the planet you'd like to visit. So that's because of the else. And then the code, the program ends. So if I do the same thing, and if I hit Y, okay, traveling to, and then there's the end. So if I do the same thing, hit capital N, okay, the planet you'd like to visit. So it is case sensitive. If I run it again, and I hit lowercase y, it gave me the option of the else because it did not see a capital Y. All right. So that's it for lesson number 2. If I had my choice, I'd rather get all the way through to lesson 5. But that's only because it's the first place that you do a class. Lesson 4, I think, is where you actually create the class, and lesson 5 is where you create the methods for the class. And really, it's just this code that we've already written that gets put inside of a class. Is everyone here familiar with classes already? Classes in Swift? A little bit, kind of. Okay.
So what's lesson 3 and 4?
So 3 is we will continue doing, so right now, if you hit something, say what is your name, if you don't hit a Y or an N, if I hit an R, it just ends and assumes. Lesson 3 introduces the while statement. So I'll go through that real quickly, because it's all building on the same code. And then same thing with lesson 4. I mean, it's really all building on the same code part. And the good thing about it is if you're new to Swift, you see more patterns of syntax, not design patterns, but patterns of syntax, which will help you experiment more. Okay, so now let's go to lesson 3. I'm just going to start out with their version of lesson 3. That way I know that I didn't introduce any mistakes that would keep the lesson from working. So again, it's doing that automatic conversion, changing the print lns to just print, which is an updated Swift syntax. So we still have our main, we still have all of our code here. And we have the decision. So what we will do is we're going to modify the existing input to handle, see, we ask for a Y or an N. Here it is, we ask for a Y or an N, but if the user types in anything else, it still falls into this else, which doesn't make sense, you know, for the way that this program is supposed to work. So we're going to add in a while statement so that the input is continually captured until the user answers the question with a Y or an N. And the way that we will do that is to, we'll say, add while not decision equals yes for capital Y, or, this is the or, decision equal capital N. So we'll say, oh, I need to add this up here before we actually get the decision here. So all this code here is going to eventually go inside of my while statement. And so is this. So I'm going to delete it from here, and because it's looping, we no longer say let. We say we're going to have to set up decision as a var. Equals, start with an empty string. Okay. Now we can use decision over and over again, and whatever the get line returns is going into that very var decision. So then we'll put the checks. I'm copying and pasting that in here. Decision equals get ln. If decision is yes, say okay, traveling to. Now we can specifically check for if decision is equal to no, as opposed to just letting it fall through that else. And then we can add a catch-all else that says print, sorry, I didn't get that. So that's it. We simply added a while statement and put the acquiring the user input inside of the while, so that if they say yes, this happens. If they say capital Y, this happens. If they say capital N, that happens, but if they don't say either of those, then this happens, and it'll just keep going until a Y or an N are chosen. Capital Y or capital N. So I'm gonna run this. And so what is your name again? Nice to meet you. Shall I randomly choose a planner for you to visit? This time when I say R, it says, sorry, I didn't get that. If I choose lowercase n, still sorry, I didn't get that. And obviously if I choose capital N, then false, because the end decision of that if-else statement. So, okay, name the planner you'd like to visit, and the program ends. So pretty straightforward, what you would expect here. So I'm gonna say capital Y. Nope, sorry, I didn't get that. Or sorry, lowercase y, sorry, I didn't get that. And then capital Y, okay, traveling to. So that's the essence of lesson 3. Now lesson 4, so the while loop syntax is the essence of lesson 3. Are there any questions or any kind of additions, comments? No. All right, now lesson 4, we're going to make our first effort to make a class. And this is what I hope that anyone who wants to walk away and practice this on your own will be able to start doing classes. So, now we're going to purposely create an error. We're going to create a new file to hold our class. We're going to purposely create an error in Xcode just to show the creation of the class. So I'm going to close this project here. I'm going a little bit fast because I can get through this before too long here. But don't let that hesitate. I mean, don't let that make you hesitate to raise your hand and provide input or ask a question. All right, so doing lesson 4, space adventure, conversion again. So we're all used to this process now. Now we open it up, we have main and helper function. So the existing code that we've been doing has been in main.swift this whole time. We put it in the first file that Swift looks to run, and then the helper functions were in the helper function.swift file. For this one, we're going to create a new file. So we're going to model what happens in a space adventure, such as greeting the travelers and asking what planets they want to travel to, and then traveling to the planet. So remember, this app is like 15 lessons long. So as you know, Swift is an object-oriented language, and therefore we use classes to define the objects that a program can use to model the concept of this space adventure. So in order to fit that object-oriented pattern, we're going to create a new file, a new file called spaceadventure.swift. And this is how we get into a more realistic picture of programming in app here. So you can do Command N for a new file. I'm going to do it the long way so that you see file, new, or Xcode, the file menus in new, and then file. I'll choose Swift file. This is iOS, OS 10 source, but it wouldn't have mattered. But I'm going to choose iOS and click on Swift here. Oh, wait. We are doing OS. Yeah, we're doing OS 10 work here. This is not an iOS app technically. OS X. Am I thinking of that right? I think so. Okay. Then we'll call it Space Adventure. So it's going to create this file called spaceadventure.swift. So we want that target to be checked here. Gotta have zoom. want that target to be checked here, which it should have done by default, and hit create. And now a new file appears here called spaceadventure.swift, and it automatically, you know, adds all this in depending on how you have your name configured in the Xcode. Okay, so now we're going to instantiate a space adventure object, which is going to cause the error. We're going to instantiate this object inside of main. I'm going to do it right below the import statement, and we'll say, oh, whoops. Hold on. Yeah. Jumped ahead of myself. So we're going to instantiate, we're going to say let adventure equal then space adventure. This is how you instantiate the object. Now, I don't know why Xcode spins at this. When I went through this before, it spun too. I guess it spent all that time looking for it before it determined that there was an error. That must have been what it was doing. There is no object called space adventure. So we know we have an error, and what we're about to do is going to give Xcode what it's looking for so that it does not tell us that we have an error. Alright, so now I'm clicking on my Space Adventure Swift file, and I'm going to create a Space Adventure class. So in Swift, the syntax is class Space Adventure. One thing that the lesson wants to point out is the words are proper case. Is that what it's called? Upper camel case is what they call it. So when you're doing a class, the tradition, I guess, is capital, first word, capital, any further word after that. As opposed to when we talked about variables, it was lowercase first word, capital, any word after that. So now that we've created this class, if we come, I'm gonna hit save, so Command S. If we come back to our main, now there's no error here. The error cleared because Xcode now sees the class, finds the class. So let's trigger another error because we're going to call a method on this class called Space Adventure.
James?
Yes, yes.
Does class always have to be a separate file, or can it be in the same file?
That's a good question. What did you say again?
Same file, right? It can be anywhere, the same file or different file.
Yeah.
It's all part of the same project.
Yes, as long as it's part of the same project. So, so one of the things that it mentions in the lesson to say is that I'm not sure if it's tradition or readability for you to put the class in its own file. Let's see here.
Well, wouldn't that be keeping to the MVC pattern as well? Because you have the class separated from the controller, it's the model, so it's data. Really does have to be integrated into the and also for readability.
Yeah, I think, yeah, what you're saying is definitely right. In terms of it's still, I think it's still MVC, even if you have those two pieces in the same file, because the pattern is MVC. That's the only distinction. I saw you shake your head like this. So
well, yeah, I mean, I think it's more or less just good object-oriented practice, right? Just to keep everything
in
its own if it's a definition of an object like a space adventure, then it should be like in its own organizationally, I guess.
Okay, and the only distinction that I wanted to make to what you said, Lamar, and I'm not 100% certain that I'm right in saying this, is that I believe even if you had it in the same file, it still would be MVC. That's still MVC. It's not the separate file that makes it MVC, but it's still a best practice for you to put it in its separate file, if that makes sense. I only say that for the benefit of the question that was asked about MVC earlier, because I wouldn't want you to walk away thinking that, because, you know, it's all in one file that is not MVC. It still could be MVC even if it's all in one file.
Yeah, MVC is a pattern around like object classes, so you have a model class, a view class, and a controller class.
You just talked literally about the file, it could be.
Where they're located in
Yes.
a file or in separate files, doesn't matter, it's really the classes themselves have to be a model class, view class, and controller class.
Yeah, that's
That
why.
would be known as massive view controller, right?
Massive.
Massive view controller.
And there's people who code like that too, just put everything in one big file.
It'd be ugly.
Me included, you know, if I'm rapid prototyping, it's,
Just put it all in one.
lather it up and disperse it later.
So is it recommended, like, if you have a smaller class that's specific to a particular view controller, I typically would, personally, give me feedback, I'll put that smaller class in that view controller. But if it's something bigger, or something I'm gonna use across other view controllers, I'll put it in a separate Swift file, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that kind of leads to, kind of like accessibility, like how to like certain things you may want to access across other classes, like you may have one class that uses this other class in another file, or maybe it's just this, you know, controller class only needs this one particular data model, right? It has it inside of its own class.
Yeah.
So, you know, without going into the Objective-C part, but within a class, you can actually have other classes defined within that main class. And the reasons you would do that is if you only use that class within your parent class, within your other class. So it's just basically just saying, I'm only gonna use this within this scope here, I'm not gonna use this anywhere else. But if you really want to have classes that you can reuse later on, you probably wanna keep them in separate files, cause then you can just drag in a file that has a class and everything. Cleaner, that's all.
That's why that's a good question, Mark. That's why that's a good question. Okay, so right underneath here, we're gonna instantiate a method. Okay. He didn't give me an error fast enough, I thought, what happened? Okay, so we just tried to instantiate a method and we don't have that method defined, so we can expect this error.
Just blame it on the network.
Yeah.
Network speed.
So it says to observe the error notice. Space Adventure does not have a member named Start. The class Space Adventure does not have a member named Start. And of course, if we look at Space Adventure, there is no member named Start. Okay, so now lesson 5 is going to create that member Start. And I didn't print it out.
It's very cryptic, they say call it a member, you know, it's hard to know what a member really means. In this case, member could mean a function or a variable or anything.
Yeah.
It's just basically saying that the Space Adventure class doesn't have anything, function or variable that has that name.
Okay.
So, you know, it could say it doesn't have the function start, or it doesn't have the variable start, but it just called it a member, so.
Nice generic.
Those are kind of things that, you know, once the compiler gets more sophisticated, they'll start being a little bit more cleaner with their error syntax. To kind of make it a little bit easier to understand. Cause if you didn't know, you basically copy that line of error text, put it in Google, and then have someone else try to solve your problem.
Exactly.
You know, have someone on Google try to figure out what that means for you, you know. That's the typical troubleshooting for when you get errors. You just copy that error, put it in Google, and hopefully the first thing in the results is your solution.
Exactly.
So I guess making that stuff unencrypted is not at the top of Apple's list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, what's funny is when they finally get to a point where you actually can understand some of the stuff in the compiler, they say, hey, we got a whole new compiler, got a whole new syntax, you know, a whole new language. You know, I was just now understanding all the Objective-C compiler junk, you know.
So we're essentially going to add and a start method to the space adventure class. And the point is to recognize that objects may only respond to methods defined as part of their own interface or parent interface hierarchy. Discover the Swift method implementation syntax, and then analyze how readability and expressiveness may be side effects of proper abstraction of code. So I like this stuff because it helps that vocabulary start sinking into my mind. So that's why I put it up there, you know. Because there's certain things that you do and you didn't know, oh, this is what you call what you do. So,
It's a good way of putting it, actually.
you know.
That's absolutely what it is. I mean, you Google it, right, and you find out how to do it, and then you give it a name, and then you figure out, oh, that was wrong name, but it's still the same thing.
Right. Right. So I'm going to load up. Let's close this project and open number 5. I'm not sure if that was number 5, but no, it wasn't. Okay. So open number 5. Same conversion process. Next. Generating preview. Save.
Probably need to fork this thing and convert them all.
It might be updated.
It might be,
I just downloaded the project, so no, it hasn't been.
No, it hasn't been updated. Okay, so now we have our main, we have our space adventure, and we have our helper functions. The same starting point, or this is the starting point, which is the end of lesson 4. And this time, we will talk about how the space adventure object does not know how to handle the start method call. And let's see if they left the error in there. Yep, theirs has the error. So that's what we want. Make sure that we're at the right place. Okay, so inside, creating a method, we say function start, and that defines the method. So the func keyword start is the method name, and right now the parameter list is empty. So in between the parentheses is where the parameters would go, and that parameter list is empty. Just with this method, what would you call that, definition? If I go back to main, we no longer have an error here, because it sees the method start. So what we will do is take our existing code that is not any kind of object-oriented programming, and we're going to see if we can objectize this. Take it out of there and put it inside of our class now, our function start, and see if there's any errors if I didn't do anything right. Okay, and then, oh, is there an error? Let's run it. Oh, it's succeeded.
Oh, okay, just one.
Okay, so, all right, so we know how this works. If I zoom in here, what is your name? And it's the same. Should I randomly choose a print? What happens if I just put enter? Sorry, I didn't get that. PENW capital Y. There we go. And the program ends. So I'll try the next one. Enter my name, and then wrong ones, then capital N, and it took the other route, and the program ended. So the key here, that's literally the end of lesson 5. The key here is understanding this class implementation, which doesn't fit on the screen here.
That's the same code for Siri. Sorry, I didn't get that. Sorry, I didn't get that.
Oh, yeah, it's got the same code for Siri. Oh,
Yeah.
I didn't notice that. Yeah.
Just using text to speech and
Yeah, exactly. And Chris would know how to do that right off.
Siri Space Adventure.
Oh, oh, that's, there's a story behind this. It's Elisa or whoever, an old friend of series. Okay, you know, wow. So this is the object, we made it object oriented now by saying now main is nice and clean, it's concise, and the code is broken apart like it should be in an object oriented implementation. Your main just has you setting that object here and then calling a method on it.
What file is this?
What file? This is main.
This is the new one?
Yes, this is main.swift. So before, if you remember, our main was cluttered with all of our code. So that's like a no-no. You know, everything was just in main. Now we broke out a class into its own file. We have a helper functions in its own file, and then we have our work done by the object space adventure inside this method called start, adhering to object-oriented principles. So that's it for, I think today, I think that's a good stopping point. The next lessons, there's another 10 lessons, I believe, and I haven't looked ahead to see what they get into, but the fact that now if you walk away, you can essentially create an object of your own and know how to call it, know how to do some of this simple console-based interaction. So it's not, when you're learning iOS development, this allows you to jump straight into some Swift syntax and just playing around with the syntax, especially the get line and playing around with some very simple Swift interaction. Whereas if you had to do that using the interface, we would have had to talk about storyboards, we would have had to talk about text fields and all kinds of stuff just to get to the point to where you can understand what this is doing. So I thought that this was a powerful way of, real simple if you already know Swift, but it's still a powerful way for someone new to Swift to do something useful immediately. Are there any questions or anything that anyone would like to add, either on this topic or on another topic? Is that it?
I guess I was gonna say, if you haven't, you know, run this, it's definitely good to start a lesson at the beginning where we started with lesson 1, I guess, or collage 1, just so that, you know, you can get familiar, because I think what we did in the first part was we went over like Xcode and kind of the interface stuff that's in Xcode to help you understand what the buttons are, where how to navigate the environment. So if you haven't gotten to that part, it's really good to walk through just so you kind of know how to use Xcode, so that, you know, some of this stuff is a little easier to understand. So.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thanks for bringing that up. The first set of lessons was word collage, and it immediately jumped into.
What folder was that in?
It is in, if you download the entire project, the entire lesson PDF.
Yeah.
It's called, the folder's called All Materials, and then under that folder you have presentations, lesson plans, and Xcode projects.
Okay.
So it's under lesson plans.
Level 1, right?
And it's level 1. So word collage and space, let me zoom in. Word collage and space adventure are all of your level 1 learning under this Swift curriculum. And we finished word collage last couple of meetings. And then of course space adventure has 15. Both, as I was saying, sorry, broken record. What I like about space adventure is that it teaches you without UI. So word collage taught a lot of UI. You know, we talked about auto layout. We talked about storyboards. Chris did a demonstration. Chris Voss did a demonstration on UI kit dynamics, which is not part of this, but it was cool to see the physics built in to the UI kit dynamics classes. But still, it's all UI, and it'll get you in tune to what using Xcode and comfortable using Xcode with outlets, outlets and actions. Now the presentations, I could not see where Space Adventure used any presentations, but there are a bunch of presentations, including a presentation on Model View Controller. So if you download, I can't remember if we've talked about this yet. I don't think we have, but if you download the curriculum, Model View Controller is talked about here. So it tells you how you're modeling real world elements of the app. So we haven't done this. There's in every presentation they have words to help the instructor lead on what should be talked about as well. So that can help you start wrapping your mind around Model View Controller as it pertains to iOS development.
Which chapter is that in again?
This is the only way I know. It's here in the presentations, but the only way that I know where a lesson is actually used is to open them up and go to materials.
So this is under the lessons folder, you said, and you can go to these PDFs and it'll show you which materials, like what other, materials are used for this lesson.
Yes, exactly. So in the lessons, lesson plans, let me zoom in. In the lesson plans, and then there's level 1, level 2, level 3. So I imagine by the time we get to level 3, we'll be doing some pretty cool stuff. But we're at level 1 right now. And then Space Adventure, and then these lessons. And I see we're gonna have a presentation at lesson 7, where we talk about, I just opened up that PDF, and under materials, it says initialization presentation. So that means, if I go back to the presentations, next time we'll be looking at this presentation. So we'll talk about convenience initializers at some point at our next meeting. So this is real powerful because, we've been running this group for, we're over 2 years now. And of course, it started out Objective-C, and this is all in, I thought open source, but that's not it. It's Creative Commons. It's a Creative Commons lesson plan and curriculum. I think it's a real good opportunity. This plus, you still need your Paul Hagerty's, your other books, your Stanford University, but this gives us a contact point for getting together and learning it as a group. So that's it. That's all I have for today. This went actually 1 hour and 15 minutes, almost full 2 hours. So are there any other questions? Anything somebody would like to share? Yeah, thank you.
I was just gonna say, if anybody are working on apps and stuff, it's always good to do a show and tell. I know Gabriel, he's submitted an app. I'm always wanted, make sure that, since we're a community of developers, we show off what we've been working on. So just so we can at least say, okay, he's got an app, download it, give it 5 stars, and support your local developer, right? So you can probably explain it better what your app does.
Well, I don't know how to show you, but
can I bring it up on iTunes? What is it called?
No, it's not published. I submitted it.
Okay.
And basically it's like, I don't know. Probably I can just.
You need to get an Apple TV and hook it up so
I have an Apple TV, but.
Or just pull up FaceTime and you can get the front camera and just show it there.
Because it's too far, right? To show
Actually,
you.
do you have
Like
a
flappy?
you have a cable? Because you can do screen share through the cable.
Yeah.
Okay.
QuickTime.
QuickTime.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a 5?
yeah, right.
That's interesting.
I got a question. Is there anyone into UI design or any graphics or anything?
No.
Do you have any recommendation on any books that I can check out?
The way I I do it is I use Sketch.
Oh, I was saying like in terms of like learning better UI, because my UI is really good.
There's a book that this guy.
That's the first step, man.
Right. You get good at it, and then get really good at it. Check out like, you know what Medium is?
Yeah.
There, if you follow like their UI, their design stuff, that's really good. Or, and a really good book that's just for design is called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. He was on like Apple's like design board and whatnot. That's a really good book. Don't Make Me Think is like.
I love that
I
book.
heard about that.
Yeah.
What's it called?
Don't Make Me Think.
Don't make me think.
Yeah.
Who's that by?
Don't Make Me Think. I'm not sure.
I don't know, as soon as you put in Don't Make Me Think, it
Okay.
should be like the first thing that pops up.
Okay. I'm taking notes. I'll probably put the links on Slack or something. So definitely, you guys join the Slack if you can.
What's the name?
I use Slack pretty extensively with other projects and stuff. And just talk to James, and he can add your email address and send you an invite to join Slack. So if you guys haven't heard of Slack, basically it's kind of like a little community message client. So a lot of teams, small teams, and small companies, they use Slack to just kind of message each other. It's kind of like a simple messaging client, but you can create your own little private chats, you can do one-on-one chats. You know, there's kind of like, you can do a team chat, and you can do private group chats. So it's kind of set up in a way where everybody can kind of communicate with anybody within the team. So it's really useful, and then it automatically can send you push notifications. Like someone sends you a direct message, or someone sends a message to a forum that you're listening to within the team. You can actually get push notifications to your phone when it goes and say, hey, you know, somebody mentioned your name. It's really useful, and I think it would be good for this stuff when we're sharing like books and, you know, links to pages and stuff. Slack basically just keeps it all archived, so you can always go back.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
I found a build that uses a ton of data.
I don't even say yes to that.
No idea.
Oh, which one did you go to?
No, I want to make it app.
I think I'm gonna have to say yes.
A lot of the data.
Say yes.
Okay.
And I have no idea how to use Swift.
Now you have to
Oh.
say yes.
It's pretty straightforward. Swift. I don't really.
Yeah, I can show you something I did.
First 100 miles or whatever, but.
Okay, cool, yeah, perfect.
So let me put it this way.
It's pretty good.
Swift by itself
Yeah, cause my,
doesn't really have a JSON parser,
this is.
but inside the
Okay, now if I restart it.
foundation framework, there is a NS JSON serializer or serializer, something like that.
I thought
That basically handles
Is that
converting.
from foundations or like a design or both?
It's in the, so the
It's
way
just
it works is like this, right? Swift is like the language, and then there's these frameworks that basically gives you the foundation object. So basically give you like NS object and all these other objects.
She's
That's
looking
how-
for foundations, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting the way I look at it too.
Yeah, importing foundation basically gives you the foundation object, which are like NS object, NS array, NS dictionary. And then in Swift, you have like array, string, dictionary, that kind of stuff. But inside the foundation framework is also NS JSON serializer, which basically converts the JSON as a string into a dictionary or an array. So it basically reads the JSON string and parses out all the elements, and puts it into a dictionary somewhere, and then you can access it as a dictionary.
What about like these like APIs and stuff?
Yeah, the user
Like in Swift.
interface.
So basically, this app is to learn languages. In the top, we're close to the score. It says madre in Spanish, and right now it says necesitar, and you have to swim with the octopus with the right answer in English to need in this case. In this case, okay, if I fail, I have this also, if I fail like 10 times,
Oh yeah, it says, that's awesome.
it has red octopus, no thank you, or maybe later.
Excuse me, iTunes needs your attention.
Sorry, I have that.
Maybe
turned
later.
on.
And basically that's it. And the app, right now I submitted the app, it's going to be free. And the only thing that I'm planning to make money, this is just like a test because this is my second app. And I'm just trying how much money I can make with the ads. That's all, but it's going to be free. And I have close to another 20 ideas, close to this.
Wow.
Because it's very simple, right? In this case, I'm teaching Spanish, and I can teach Portuguese, I can teach English, I can teach you name it, right? German or whatever. So, and actually, I have prototypes for. Like for example, Japanese, probably I'm gonna fail because I don't speak Japanese. But like in this, oh, and by the way, I don't know why we cannot hear the, oh, I know why.
You gotta change the volume, yeah.
The volume's over.
Oh, you're on the, is it just to the left right here?
Yeah, that one.
Oh, you did.
No,
Okay.
was it microphone?
Yeah, so,
But it's still down though too.
Yeah, I'll turn it up in addition to what you did.
so basically also, you can hear the pronunciation in this case, Japanese. I don't know what is that.
Switch it back, take the
Do you
input
hear
color.
ototoi?
So you're using the built-in,
Synthesizer.
Yeah, I'm using the, actually, this was taught, this Chris gave us a class.
Yeah, Chris
Chris gave us a class in this Meetup at the very beginning to
Synthesize.
sing a song for
Valentine's.
Valentine's Day.
That's right.
So that's it. This is the app I already submitted, but I mean it hasn't been approved. So maybe in a couple of weeks.
Nice. Now, what is I know Apple came out with a new feature with regard to the ad blocker or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah.
How does that impact the whole ad thing in terms of, does anybody know?
What is
Ad
that?
blocker? Yeah, I think that only affects, it won't.
It only affects like the
Browser?
like if your browser,
Yeah.
not the app,
Okay, not the ad.
not the apps.
Yeah, I think there's the only other thing is like ad trackers. Like sometimes advertisements track like your location, or they keep track of like you clicked on this one and you clicked on that one. So you can actually go into the iPhone and like reset the advertisement thing. Because basically they track like a unique ID. And so if you could go in and change your unique ID basically, I suppose they can't track it.
Hey, that deserves one real quick. That deserves a hand. So. Great to hear you got some of the inspiration from a talk here too. So
Yeah.
that's really neat. Yes, go ahead.
I can show something really quick that I'm
Alright.
working on.
Oh, really?
So basically, I'm coaching basketball, coaching my boys.
What was your name again?
Multi.
Okay.
And we're coming with a game board with a marker to show them the plays, and I found myself a few times throwing in the middle of the game, and the marker is not working anymore. So that's the.
Bring it to the front. Plug it in.
It's basically basketball court.
Yeah.
Just, you can throw on it, and make all the plays, and with the press of the button, you just clear it.
Clear it.
That's just a very simple.
Dude, let me tell you, man.
strategy for myself.
I was sitting with my buddy. We were in California. We were actually like on lunch break. We were working at Apple together, and we actually were talking about that exact idea. And like that'd be a great app. Cause like when the iPad first came out, I was like, that'd be a great idea.
Yeah,
And of course, we never did it. And I think there's probably other ones in the market.
Yeah, there are a lot.
Yeah.
I'm planning
But-
to add some more functionality
Yeah.
before I upload it to the store.
Yeah.
Things that I think
But-
it will help me manage a team. But,
I think that's a clear example of how necessity is the mother of invention, right?
yeah.
Because I think you're doing that for your kids to teach them Spanish, and you're doing that for your team, So the best ideas come from a need. So it's great.
That's good, man, I'm inspired.
This group.
Yeah.